Yo guys, welcome back. So today I wanted to go ahead and talk to you guys about making new characters in Lost Ark outside of an event. So recently they announced that they are, going to be looking at changing this with some events and some systems that are coming through the summer. Hopefully it'll come sooner rather than later, but probably would be closer to August, I bet. So I wanted to try and push this out there. Something we've been working on is our NA East account. I specifically went through the struggle of making some fresh new characters to try and do raids on. And so there's a lot of problems with that. And so one of them, the cost, the absolute insane cost of getting a new character to the point where they can generate any amount of gold. So what you're seeing here is my NA East account. So for those of you that may not know, I am an NA West player, but because the server merges don't really seem like they're going to happen, I thought, okay, well, I kind of wanted more content, more things to do, and also to try the new player experience and what it would be like to kind of go through the woes of trying to start Lost Ark in its current location. And so this is the account that I've created. As you can see, we have our main at 1660, so that means I'm doing, most of the end game raids outside of Brel, and then I have a 1580, and then a 1500, 1480, and a 1450. Now, most recently, we have done the 1450, and originally I actually went through the trouble of actually, documenting all of the materials and things that I had spent. And honestly, it was a long-winded thing, and I can go through that, and I could show clips of it or whatever. But more importantly, I'll just go ahead and throw up the costs for you now. But you can be able to see that these things are just so expensive. So I'll go ahead and, like I said, I'll throw them up on the screen. And so what you'll be looking at right now is the cost of getting a new character from the point that they get to in North Vern after the initial knowledge transfer, and then getting to item level 1100, which allows you to proceed from tier 2, formerly tier 1, into tier 3, by doing the first Punica Chaos Dungeon. And so this is the cost for that. So with that being said, as you can see, on the average case, we still need over 100,000 shards and 5,000, almost 6,000 redstones and 17,000 bluestones. This is kind of a huge deal if you're farming this by yourself, but ideally you have your main character that can help you kind of get through some of these. So let me go ahead and just show you guys. In my roster storage, I have a lot of the chests that I use still from when we were getting these characters. And we can see stuff like this. So for example, the pouches that we got from the last event, not all pouches, by the way, have tier 2 materials. Some of them do. So if you are ever doing this between now and when they make the changes, then you'll know. But anyway, as you could see, this pouch, for example, gives 2,700, so almost 3,000. So in that average case scenario, we are still looking at a pretty hefty cost of, roughly, 6 of those bags. And on the higher end, as you can see as well, since I'll go ahead and put this up there for you, is that it costs potentially like 48,000. And something to keep in mind is that this is actually with the stronghold research. So you don't have that even as a new player, you'll be struggling quite a bit harder. It is fairly easy. We were able to achieve this level of stronghold research even here on the NA East account with our level 18 stronghold. So kind of going back to the cost a little bit again, as you can see here, the shard chests were giving us about 20,000 per. So if you're kind of comparing those to the cost of the actual honing, it's still pretty it's a lot of value you have to sink into these characters just to get them to the point where they can do that Punica Chaos Dungeon at 1100. And keep in mind too, at this point you can't generate anything really by yourself. If you actually take the time to farm these shards out from your Chaos Dungeons and stuff like that, it will take you an obscenely long time to get the amount of shards and stuff that you need from those activities. And you can't actually find anyone to do the Guardian raids with, so you will be needing to solo those as well. Ideally, you don't do that, right? And they've kind of kept this in the game, I think, for a long time with the idea that when you go and do this, you're not going to find anybody. And so then you're going to be more incentivized instead of soloing these guardian raids and stuff by yourself to just go ahead and swipe. Or, this is kind of a slight workaround being able to use these events and stuff. But I don't know how much that was intended, especially because not all of these chests, even from the events, do give tier 2 materials. So I think it's very much intended that they just wanted you to either get frustrated or to swipe and skip all of this. Another thing I wanted to really kind of drive home was the knowledge transfer cost. So, in order to get a brand new character starting at level 1 all the way to Northburn, it will cost you 600 gold, and that gets you a level 50 character, and it gets you into the start of tier 2, the old tier 1 for those players from back in the day. And then at this point too, as you've honed up to 1100, you will be needing to do the Punica Chaos Dungeon. And so Rohunda will be another 1000 gold, Yorn is 1400 gold, Phaeton 1600 gold, Punica 2400 gold, and that's a grand total of 7000 gold to get your brand new character from basically level 0 or level 1 all the way up to the point where it can do that very first Punica Chaos Dungeon and start getting your 1275 gear from that activity. Of course, another way that you could get around that is you could, instead of knowledge transfer, actually run through all of the story by yourself. It will take several hours, so I wouldn't really do that, but I know a lot of my friends don't mind running through the story multiple times. But for a brand new player, I think there would be nothing more boring than trying to run an alt character that you just want to be able to play through the story. So I'm just assuming that you're either going to knowledge transfer or at least want to know about the costs of what it would take. So once you do get to 1100 and you do either the story or the knowledge transfer, you do get access to what you see in front of you is the Punica Chaos Dungeon, where you start getting these pieces of gear. And after you transfer them, they go from 1250 to 1275. Um, and so that does allow you to start progressing towards being able to do your very first raids. Now, something I didn't realize back in the day when I was first attempting this is I thought, okay, well, surely I can go back and I can do some of those older Chaos or Abyss dungeons, sorry. Even the normal one at 1340. So 1340 was my original target of like where I wanted to be able to go because I thought I could start making gold. However, you still can't do these solo mode. So what that means is that you have to actually find an entire party before you can enter activity. Because as you can see here, I don't have enough members. I don't get to go into a dungeon. So what that means is that in order to get to your first solo raid that you can do to earn gold for your account on your character is actually you need to get to your very first Legion raid, which is 1415, in order to do a solo Alton. So I'll go ahead and put the cost up here for you. By the way, one thing I did want to mention too is that when you do get to the Punica knowledge transfer, that actually does give you some level 5 gems. So at this point, you will be able to do Chaos Dungeon and stuff like that. You will have some amount of gems, which is nice. But to, like I said, progress to the point where you can start making gold, you actually need to reach this 1415 marker. So I'll go ahead and throw this up on the screen here, and you guys can see that the amount of materials you need is still kind of a lot, even with the, again, discount from the Stronghold research. But overall, it's like it doesn't look like a ton, especially when you start considering that you have some of these pouches. The big throttle, I think, personally, is actually your shards. So as you can see, each chest only starts giving 5,000 shards per chest. And even on the average case scenario for the 1415, you still need 75,000 shards. So only getting 5,000 per chest, that is going to be, quite a bit of chests that you have to actually use. So it's just something to think about. And then, obviously, worst case scenario, I'll go ahead and show that too. But basically, it just goes to 92,000. Oh, so it is going to cost you almost, I'm not gonna really do the math on here, but you get the idea. 5,000 compared to 92, it's gonna be a fair bit of chests. So just keep that in mind, and just again, kind of all goes into this idea that it is just far too expensive, and part of the reason why they are revamping all of this, and hopefully they do a really good job through the power of editing, and mostly because I didn't want to do the the math in my head on camera and get it wrong in front of you guys. But it goes from being either 15, roughly 15 of those shard chests to 19 of those shard chests, just to get to 14, 15, and be able to do your very first solo mode raid. Now, you'll see in a moment that I went to this point and I was like, okay, well, how much would it cost me then to get to, be able to do 3 solo mode raids, so 1475. And so you'll see the price, it goes up a bit more. And so I stopped and didn't want to invest more of my shards into this. But something else that we kind of need to consider as well is that if we just scroll over here, hopefully you can see. So after you do get to 1415, you can start buying from the solo mode shop. So something to note is that none of these things are available before you hit 1415. But once you do hit this point and you do have some solo mode medals, you can go in here and buy them all. So it is quite helpful and for a lot of different things. The 30 large bags giving you 45,000 shards is definitely going to be helpful. That would have been a lot of those chests that we don't have to open, or we ended up opening anyway. Um, and so yeah, there's a lot of these mats, and you can buy these from the solo mode shop every single week across all of your characters. But if you don't have that many characters that can do solo mode, you'll be very limited in which of these things you can buy. Once you do have a couple of established characters, it will become a lot easier because the higher level raids do end up giving a significant amount. So currently, my main is actually only getting solo mode medals from doing Echidna. I do hard Echidna, so we're getting the solo mode medals from there. And then pretty much the rest of the solo mode medals are gotten from my regular account character. So if like I said, we want to be able to do our very first 3 gold earning raids, what you actually need to do is continue on from here from 1415 all the way to 1475. And keep in mind that as you improve, you actually don't get the extra gold income. For whatever reason, I completely forgot about this, but there's only a solo mode at the base level. So when you get to 1445, you won't be able to do harder Vulcan to earn more gold. Same with Vicus, but you will need to get to 1430 to get to Vicus, and then all the way up to 1475 in order to do Clown. So let's go ahead and break down what the cost for that is. All right, so I'll go ahead and throw it up on the screen for you guys. But as you can see, that the cost to get to 1475 ends up going all the way up to boom, like both of these here. So I'm posting the average scenario and the worst case scenario, and again, these are both with the stronghold research as well. And as you can see, the cost, especially for the shards, ends up going to the moon. And then in the worst case scenario, I look at the number of leaps and look at the number of those blue stones, even the Arehas. So the Arehas now, at this point, like I said, you can buy 100 Areha per week from the solo mode shop, and that will help. But when you need, almost 1100 to get, an average case, and almost 3000 to get to 1475, otherwise, you'll notice quite quickly that the numbers just don't add up. And keep in mind, this is only so that way your character has the idea or the ability to do 3 gold earning raids. That's it. We're not trying to push to the highest end content. We're not even trying to push that far into tier 3. We just want to be able to do 3 raids because that's kind of the standard on what a character does during the week. And so these costs are definitely very prohibitive, and especially if you start thinking about how many of those chests it would take. Like if you need 20 or 250,000 shards or 311,000 shards, we're only getting 5,000 shards per chest. So obviously we didn't have enough chests to even attempt this, even though that was originally my goal, which is unfortunate. you know, you do get to the point where the chaos dungeons do help you, but the value you get from the chaos dungeons is not as much as you might think again. And so this will take you a while to get. And then just really briefly, you know, let's say you're even trying to get to Brel, you will have to add an additional tap onto that as well. So it does go all the way up to in the average case scenario, 358,000 shards, 1,570 Areha, you know, 26,000 reds, 80,000 blues, and 2,600. Sure, those chests will definitely help you, but at the end of the day, this is still a lot of materials, and again, this only gets you to Brel, where things kind of continue to get even worse from there. So the nice thing is though is that once you do get to 1490, you do start earning a fair bit more from your weekly Chaos Dungeon collection, which is nice. But again, it starts taking you a very, very long time before you can even remotely start talking about like doing Triangle or those other activities. And so again, this whole thing was just kind of like a starting characters from you know, from basically level 1, just kind of talking about what kind of materials it will take, and then just showing how expensive it is, especially for a brand new account, to try and reach these levels on a new character. And realistically, I don't think that asking or wanting a character to hit 1475 so you can do 3 raid activities is actually a huge ask. Now, some people might disagree. That's up to you. I think that should kind of be the standard on what people expect, because that's basically what this game is doing your raids on your characters, at least for now. That might change. But that is what people play Lost Ark for. Now, again, hopefully that will change, but I think that should be the minimum expectation. But yeah, this is just an astronomical cost for a brand new player, and part of the reason why even on our account we didn't continue with the Arcana. We will probably at some point in the long term, and I do plan to do more Chaos Dungeons like that to get her more shards. But I just kind of wanted to talk about my experience and how it was going through up to this point and even further beyond. So as you saw, we had a couple characters that are already in that Brel stage and trying to push towards Triangle as well. You know, it's just kind of been a side project for me, but I thought it was a good, you know, good use of time and just kind of fun to check out what new players are expected to do in the current state. So I think that's gonna be it for us today, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Interact with the video if you enjoyed it, or if you had any questions or comments or anything, like you normally would, and yeah, we will probably be doing another video at some point about the NA East account, just because I think it's kind of been a fun experience, really getting to see what it's like being a new Mokoko, and just kind of going over like, you know, what kind of my average experience was. I think pretty soon I will be losing that Mokoko status. This is the last week for the Mokoko status, at least on our main, and so it'll be interesting to see where we move on from here. Admittedly, though, after we start getting more of that other content, I don't know how long the NA East account will last, but that will be another discussion for another time. So I will catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one, and peace out, guys.